Guns are quiet in the Middle East right now, but you wouldn't know it looking at the New York Stock Exchange. Global energy markets brace for a massive shock because the pause in fighting is highly fragile. We reached this breaking point after the conflict erupted on February 28, 2026, when the US and Israel carried out coordinated airstrikes targeting Iranian-linked sites. Iran retaliated by launching extensive missile and drone operations against US military positions stationed across the region. By early April, regional mediators managed to negotiate a halt to the crossfire. But this is strictly a temporary pause. The underlying triggers of the conflict remain entirely unresolved. This map isolates the geographic choke point at the center of the crisis, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 1/5 of all the seaborne oil in the world flows through this tight 21-mile stretch of water, and it is currently held hostage by this political vacuum. The combat has moved from the battlefield to the negotiating table. Right now, global energy stability is hanging on what happens in those closed-door meetings. Tehran's strategy to turn this ceasefire into a permanent treaty relies on a strict 30-day timeline and a highly specific 14-point proposal. This split-screen diplomatic ledger visualizes the exact terms Iran is putting on the table. Looking at the left column, we can map out their primary economic and military requirements. They want an end to the U.S. naval blockade, a gradual lifting of existing sanctions, and the unfreezing of specific Iranian financial assets. Below that, they outline their security demands, a phased reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, coupled with hard guarantees against any future strikes by the U.S. or Israel. Notice what is conspicuously missing. Iran has deliberately decoupled its nuclear program from these immediate ceasefire talks, insisting those issues must be negotiated separately down the line. The structure of this proposal is precise. It extracts maximum immediate economic relief while keeping the future of its nuclear development insulated from current scrutiny. The United States is currently reviewing the framework, but the initial reaction is deeply skeptical. President Donald Trump publicly stated that Iran has not paid a big enough price for its recent operations. Filling out the right side of our ledger reveals Washington's red lines. The U.S. is demanding absolute, long-term freedom of navigation through the strait, alongside binding guarantees that restrict Iran's future military capabilities. Crucially, the U.S. flatly rejects Iran's attempt to delay the nuclear discussion. Washington requires immediate clarity on those commitments right now, baked directly into this specific deal. The maritime tension is particularly sharp. Iran intends to implement a toll arrangement for ships passing through the strait. Washington has threatened severe sanctions against any commercial shipping company that pays those tolls. These two lists represent entirely incompatible views on regional control. The gap between them is wide, and closing it will be incredibly difficult. This diplomatic standoff is already bleeding into physical supply chains. There are fresh reports of security incidents involving commercial vessels trying to navigate near the strait. To defend against these logistical breakdowns, OPEC Plus agreed to artificially increase oil production quotas. They are attempting to flood the market to offset the severe risks of ships avoiding the region. Large-scale combat is paused, but no one is standing down. Conventional military forces and regional proxy groups on both sides remain on high alert. And the clock is running. Tehran is holding firm to its demand for a finalized agreement within a strict 30-day window. The temporary ceasefire is holding for now. But if diplomats cannot reconcile the heavy clashes in this 14-point framework, the collapse of that timeline will inevitably trigger a devastating regional war.